We are talking with Elon Musk, and let's start with the IPO. And it's been launched. You are now a public company. How do you think it's been going?
I think it's been going reasonably well. When we went out with the IPO, we went out at 17, and almost the entire time, apart from a few days since the IPO, the stock has traded above the $17 offering price. It was briefly pushed below 17 by some short sellers, and then it was also briefly pushed up to, I think, $30 by speculation. But I think the region it's in right now is probably about right, in line with more or less in line with the average of analyst expectations.
Okay. Do you think the IPO has quieted some of the questions about Tesla's finances? That I saw you had done that thing on your divorce, and why that raised questions, and you felt you needed to answer that. Do you think the IPO has quieted some of that down?
Yeah, I think a lot of the speculation about Tesla's financial position has quieted down. One of the things that an IPO does, and being a public company does, is of course there's transparency and disclosure, and people know that there are audited financial statements that are being published. So there's a greater awareness of a company's financial position. And obviously there are pluses and minuses to that. But in our case, I think it's probably more positive than negative, because a careful review of our financial situation shows that, for example, on our current business line of the Roadster and lines of the Roadster and powertrain business, we're about a 20 to 22% positive gross margin business. So if that's all we were doing, we would obviously be profitable. I think that shows that we have a sort of a healthy core business. But now, of course, we are losing money because we're making massive investments in the Model S, and our powertrain factory. So that's an investment of roughly $500 million over the course of mostly over the course of 10 quarters. So you're talking about a $50 million a quarter investment on average. And so of course it's impossible for a company to be profitable in the face of that. But you can also look at do we have that money? And I think with the combination of the DOE loan plus the proceeds from the IPO, we actually have 50% more money than we actually need to execute the Model S.
Really? 50% more?
Yeah. The Model S is roughly a $500 million program, of which more than $100 million has already been spent. So on a go-forward basis, it's roughly $400 million.
$100 million has been spent?
Directly on the Model S. I mean, if you say indirectly, then it becomes a much larger number. But if you say specifically on the Model S, it's about $100 million so far. We've drawn down about $50 million of the DOE loan. So there's about $400 million left of the DOE loan. So in other words, with the DOE loan, just with the DOE loan, we actually have sufficient capital to execute the Model S business, assuming we execute it according to current plan. But then over and above that, we actually have raised $250 million through the IPO process. So that gives us effectively about a 50% safety margin on the Model S program.
One big question that I have has to do with the size of the EV market. I mean, Tesla's been pretty much lonely out there alone with an actual car on the
right. There's certainly been plenty of press releases.
The Model S, what stage of development is that in now? I mean, you told me how much you've spent on it, but where are we with it now?
So with Model S, we're about to assemble the alpha version of the car. So you've obviously seen the demonstration prototype, and
I've ridden in it.
Right.
You had it in New York. I
right.
took a ride in it then. At least it wasn't that car. It was the other one.
It's that car with it repainted, yeah. I mean, that car is the equivalent of, software equivalent of kind of demoware. It gives you the basic sort of idea of what the Model S is about, but it's fundamentally a mule. It's not production design. The Alpha build, which is due out at the end of this year, is production design, or at least it's about 85% call it roughly 80 production design. So we've completed the design of all the exterior body panels and the chassis, the suspension, steering system, the powertrain, the infotainment system, the 17-inch touchscreen display, and all that sort of stuff. So what we're doing, where we are right now is really putting all of that together into a complete system. So Alpha version, we're using language that is more commonly used for development of high-tech products and software. So you have the Alpha version, then you move to the Beta version, and then to release candidate and release. So the Beta version is due to be completed around summer next year. Roughly speaking. And then the release candidate is early 2012, and production is mid-2012. That's our current schedule.
So the first customer might have one in the middle of the year.
The middle of mid-2012. That's our target.
And I know you had plans for a 300-mile version.
Yes.
Is that still on track with like a 90 kilowatt-hour battery?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
I just before I talked to you, I talked to Richard Lowenthal at Kaloom.
Okay.
If I hadn't had it, are you familiar with Kaloom? They're not actually that far from here. They're one of the big charging companies, and he seemed to think that what would eventually happen is that cars are going to have like 125 kilowatt-hour battery packs and 500-mile range, and then.
That's a lot. I'm not sure you want to do that.
I've never heard anyone use a number that big before, but how hard is it to build a 300-mile battery?
It's not that hard to build a 300-mile range battery, or to put it another way, a 90 kilowatt-hour battery pack. As you said, it is best to talk in terms of energy content. So I think your original reference of a 90 kilowatt-hour battery pack it's a more objective reference than saying 300 miles, because if you say 300 miles, you have to say under what circumstances does it get 300 miles? Is that highway, city, combined, EPA, 2-cycle, what's the air conditioning load, that kind of thing. The energy of the battery pack is very helpful for having an objective standard for the energy pack. Although I should say that then there's another number which is equally important, which is the watt-hours per mile. So I mean, effectively, what we're saying is that the watt-hours per mile of the Model S is going to be roughly in the 300 range.
Okay. You're not going to offer that 300-mile one initially, or?
No, initially we'll just be offering for the first year of production. It'll be the 230-mile version, and it's approximately 230 miles. It's a 70 kilowatt-hour battery pack.
The size of that battery, does that make it? What does that do to the recharge time? If you were, say, on level 2, 230 volt, what would be the recharge time on that?
Well, the recharge time is you need to say what kilowatts are coming in. So you need to specify voltage and amperage, or it needs to be power, not just voltage, because you could be 230 volts and 70 amps, or 40 amps, or 30 amps.
It was 40 amps.
Well, at sort of 230, 240 volts and 40 amps, it's going to be a long charge for a 90-hour pack. Depending upon what your charger efficiency is, I mean, you're probably on the order of a 12-hour charge. or more for a 90 kilowatt pack.
What about the 70, like the standard battery pack?
Well, maybe another way to think about it is the Tesla will be offering 2 onboard chargers for the Model S, a 10 kilowatt charger and a 20 kilowatt charger. So obviously the 20 kilowatt charger would charge the battery in about 3.5 hours. The 10 kilowatt charger would take 7 hours.
Do you think that fast charging, the 480, do you think it's going to take off? Do you think there'll be a lot of those around, like at gas stations, Starbucks?
No, definitely not. Well, let me clarify with the definitely not part. The fast charging, I think, is only something you'd want to do between cities.
Yes. Okay.
So I think there is definitely a role for fast charging, as there is potentially for battery pack swap, but it's really about intercity travel, not intra-city travel. Within cities,
place would like to hear you say that.
Well, I think
there's
probably
a role for the battery swapping.
I said potentially. I mean, the battery swap thing. I mean, Shai sort of heard that first at Tesla. That's where. But with regard to battery pack swapping, I mean, we're really trying to preserve optionality to ensure that that's one of the things that can be done if that's what the consumers want. And we'll have to see if that's what consumers want.
Well, consumers might want a fast charge port.
That will always be there for our car. Yeah.
That might be an option.
At least initially, it's going to be there in all Teslas, in all Model S cars, I should say. Okay. The fast charge port. We might make that optional down the road, but initially the fast charge port will be in all Model S cars.
I wanted to ask you about the deal with Toyota and NUMMI plant. You actually built a prototype RAV4 with batteries, with Tesla batteries in it. Now, how did that perform?
It performed actually very well. It performed had better acceleration than any of the gasoline cars. I mean, obviously it's just an initial prototype. It's just kind of a rough sort of demonstration prototype. But it performed very well. The team did a great job for a short period of time and without a lot of specialization. It wasn't specifically designed. We adapted a bunch of things to the RAV4 as opposed to specifically designing things for the RAV4. For the RAV4 that comes out in 2012, that initial fleet of cars that's actually delivered to customers, that'll be where the powertrain and battery pack is specifically designed for the RAV4.
Have they committed to that yet? Because initially they wanted to do it. It was more said that way, as opposed to they are doing it. Could you say they are doing it at this point?
As Akio Toyota and I announced, the intent is to have a significant partnership and joint development. It takes a while to get any agreement figured out and work out the details of the integration and everything. So we've completed the initial agreement and are working on the longer term one, but I think it isn't done. But I think that is just a question of time, and it's not a question of whether it will get done.
So, the Roadster, I think you announced this when you announced the IPO, that the Roadster was going to go dark for a while. Did you intend to there's going to be a period where you can't buy a Roadster, but you intend to come back with a new Roadster?
Yes.
Which would be more an in-house design?
Well,
if you got France, you might as well use them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I should point out that the design of the current Roadster was, in terms of what we mean by design, as far as the styling of the current Roadster, I mean, I was the guy that directly oversaw the styling of the current Roadster. Obviously, there were some constraints in that we were using an adapted or a highly modified Elise chassis, and we were using the Elise, the glass house of the Elise, so the windscreen, side windows, and that kind of thing. But apart from that, all the body panels are different from any other car on the road. And I spent a lot of time personally on that design. So, in fact, I got some awards for it. So,
I didn't mean to imply the Lotus with batteries.
Right.
But
exactly.
If you have a clean sheet of paper, you might make it look pretty different. Is there likely to be a totally new Roadster? I understand all your resources are on the Model S right now.
Right. I want to be clear that there are 0 resources on any new Roadster, and our focus in terms of in-house vehicles is almost entirely on the Model S. I mean, there's a small amount of resources, sustaining resources on the current Roadster, but apart from that, it's all in the Model S. And the next priority after the Model S is not actually a new Roadster, it's actually an SUV, or crossover SUV.
Have you said that before?
I have said that. I've said that before. I'm not sure it's necessarily been picked up. I said that during the Roadster.
Because I knew that the next one was supposed to be even more affordable than the Model S.
Oh no, there's variations on the Model S platform.
Oh, okay.
The SUV.
Oh, yes. You have said that there were variations on the Model S.
Yeah.
Including an SUV.
Right. So the SUV variants on the Model S platform, that's something we'll probably unveil as soon as next year.
Oh.
From a design standpoint. And that would be the next product to come from Tesla after the Model S would be that crossover SUV variant on the Model S platform, which I think is an important. Some people they only want to buy something that's sort of an SUV class vehicle. So I think that's kind of an important next step. I mean, even though from a personal standpoint, I think I would like to be personally more excited about the next generation Roadster. I think the right thing to do for the company is the SUV, and so that's what we're going to do.
And isn't there also a new model, the really affordable one, that probably is a cocktail napkin sketch right now?
Well, there's our 3rd generation platform, which is what will follow from the Model S platform. And that 3rd generation platform would be a smaller wheelbase. If you think of the Model S like the equivalent of a BMW 5 or 7 Series, so the Model S is slightly bigger than a 5 Series. That's the size of the vehicle, and or perhaps comparable to an Audi A6 A8 or a Mercedes E-Class CLS. The 3rd generation platform will be more of a mass market vehicle, more closer to, say, a BMW 3 Series or an Audi A4.
And when's the target date for that?
In the best of all possible worlds, we'd start production on that in 2014. I'll be very disappointed if we're not in production with that by 2015. 5 years is a long time.
If we're thinking of what it might look like as a design, with the 3 Series or the Audi A4, would they be sort of guidelines? It might look something like that.
No. It would be essentially you'd look closer to the Model S, and it would be the design language of the Model S will then flow. Just as you can tell that there's similarities between a 5 Series BMW and a 3 Series BMW. You'd be able to tell that the 3rd generation vehicle from Tesla would have design language in line with the Model S, but it would be a smaller vehicle and more affordable, made in larger numbers. It would be probably a factor of 10 greater volume than the Model S.
What do you think that we're looking at next year, there's going to be a whole lot of more EVs on the road. Just before he went to Volvo, and that was Stefan Jacobi, and they're doing electric versions of the Jetta and the Golf. They have like 3 or 4 hybrids and electrics coming out, and just about every European automaker used to decry electric cars, and now they're announcing them. It's very funny.
It is funny. Yeah, we were sort of a voice in the wilderness there for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, there were certainly many predictions of Tesla's demise, and lots of announcements from the big OEMs of that, you can't produce an electric car with any decent range and capability, and even if you did, people wouldn't buy them. And now those very same people are announcing electric vehicle models. So I'm glad to see that, actually. I mean, it's something that I predicted would occur, and it has occurred, and I'm glad to see it.
Some of them have actually had to rush them into production.
Yep.
It could be a little difficult. So you think that's actually good for business, that there'd be a lot of players on it? Increases awareness of what electric cars are, gives consumers more of an idea of electrifying the car?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, the reason I'm doing this is because I want the entire industry to transition to electric vehicles as soon as possible. Sooner is better. It's better for the economy. It's better for the environment. If I think about what is the fundamental good that can be achieved by Tesla, if you look at it from a historical context, the fundamental good is I'd like to be able to look back and say Tesla accelerated the transition from hydrocarbons to sustainable electric transport by at least 5 to 10 years. If we can look back and say that, I would be very happy. Because that's 5 to 10 years, less damage to the environment and less economic damage.
And in some ways, I can see a parallel between you and Shai Agassi that way, in the sense that everybody said, well, we can't do this because you need a chicken and egg thing, right? You need charging stations to have an EV.
You don't need charging stations.
Yeah, you don't really, but a lot of people thought that.
They're wrong.
Okay, but he said, okay, I'll build charging stations. So he got off the dime the same way you did with building the car. I mean, you could look at it that way.
I'm not aware of any charging stations that Better Places use that any Tesla customers actually used.
Really? Not yet?
I'm not aware of them. If they are, I'm not aware of them.
You don't have cars in Israel?
We do have a few cars in Israel, so maybe there is one, somebody using, I think there's 1 or 2 cars that have been imported to Israel, so maybe those cars are using Better Place charging stations.
If you look around, look at the competition, are there any that look particularly promising to you? Car makers that look like they're doing good work? I could throw out some names.
The honest answer is, I mean, it depends on, my standard for really promising is a very high standard. So if you're asking me for my opinion of really promising, I would say no, there is not anything that's really promising. There are hopeful signs.